Alright, so now that we know what the exponent rules are, let's show a few examples using exponent rules, but this time with our fractional exponents. They're a little bit more difficult, but once you get the hang of it, they're not that bad. Let's take this for example, 5 to the 1/2 times 5 to the 1/3. And if you remember from our video before, this is really just the square root of 5 times the cube root of 5. So let's follow our multiplication rule and figure out what this is equal to. When we follow our multiplication rule, we get that this is equal to 5 to the 1/2 plus 1/3. All we have to do is figure out what 1/2 plus 1/3 is. Getting a common denominator of 6, this is 3 over 6 plus 2 over 6, which is equal to 5/6. 1/2 plus 1/3. So that means that 5 to the 1/2 times 5 to the 1/3 equals 5 to the 5/6. Now, just in case you might see this in a different form, let me show you this. This is the exact same thing, except we write it using the actual root and cube root signs instead of fractional exponents. But you need to get really fluent in being able to go back and forth between the two. All right, now let's do an example of the division rule with fractional exponents. All right, so we have 2 to the 1/5 divided by 2 to the 3/2. Using our division rule, we're going to subtract this exponent from that one. So this is going to give us 2 to the 1/5 minus 3/2. Most of the difficulty from these problems will come from just doing the proper fraction addition or subtraction. So let's do 1/5 minus 3/2 real quick. There we are. We've got 2/10 minus 15 over 10 equals to negative 13 over 10. Just getting a common denominator and doing the operation. Okay, so that means 2 to the 1/5 divided by 2 to the 3/2 is equal to 2 to the negative 13 tenths. And that's a pretty weird answer. That would be 1 over the 10th root of 2 to the 13th power. That's pretty strange. All right, let's do one more example with the exponent rule. On this one, we have x to the 1/3 times y to the 4/5 all to the 1/2 power. So we're taking the square root of these. All right, following the exponent rule, we're going to multiply exponents on both terms. So for the first term, x to the 1/3 times 1/2, and then we have y to the 4/5 times 1/2. 1/3 times 1/2 is x to the 1/6. 4/5 times 1/2 is y to the 4/10, and just reducing that fraction, that would be 2/5. So there we are, an example with the exponent rule and fractional exponents. Next, let's take a look at simplifying expressions with exponents.